Grace's new chapter, The Foundation. Grace stepped off the plane in Nassau on a warm Friday evening in May, the humid Caribbean air wrapping around her like a gentle embrace. At 74, she had never flown first class before, and the luxury of it, the wide seat, the real glass of champagne, the quiet attentiveness of the crew, felt like a small coronation. She wore the same elegant gray suit she had put on for her day of reckoning back home, but now it felt different. It was no longer armor, it was simply the clothing of a woman who had finally decided to belong to herself. A driver from the property management company met her at the airport holding a sign that read, "Mrs. Grace Thompson." She smiled at the formality. No one had called her Mrs. anything in years. She had been just Mom or Grace, or lately, the burden. The drive to the condo took her along the coast, past turquoise water and swaying palms. When they pulled into the gated community, she caught her first glimpse of the building, 3 stories of pale coral stucco, balconies facing the sea. Her unit was on the top floor, corner, with wraparound views. The condo smelled faintly of salt and long vacancy, but it was immaculate. White tile floors, high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto the sound of waves. The furniture was simple but expensive, teak and linen, and the kitchen gleamed with stainless steel she would probably never use. She walked straight to the balcony, gripped the railing, and let the tears come. Not tears of sorrow this time, but of sheer, overwhelming relief. She was here. She was safe. She was free. That first week blurred into a quiet rhythm of discovery. Mornings on the balcony with coffee, watching fishing boats and cruise ships on the horizon. Afternoons walking the beach, collecting small shells that reminded her of the ones she used to find with Danielle when her daughter was 4. Evenings reading novels she had bought at the airport, books she had denied herself for decades because there was always something more practical to spend money on. But Grace had never been one to sit idle. The old fire, the one that had driven her to work double shifts, to sell her mother's jewelry, to scrub offices on weekends, was still there. It had simply been waiting for the right fuel. One morning, while sorting through the accumulated bank statements the management company had forwarded, she noticed how much passive income the condo had generated over the years. Nearly $180,000 sat untouched in a Bahamian account. Add that to the $220,000 remaining in her U.S. investments after the plane ticket and initial expenses, and she was looking at a cushion most people her age could only dream of. She felt a flicker of anger at how little her family had truly known her, at how easily they had dismissed her, but she pushed it down. Anger was a young woman's luxury. She was too old for it now. What she had room for was purpose. She began volunteering at a local senior center in downtown Nassau. It was a modest concrete building with ceiling fans that whirred lazily and a garden out back where residents grew tomatoes and herbs. Many of the seniors were transplants like her, retirees from Canada, the UK, the US, but others were Bahamian elders who had outlived spouses, children, savings. Some had been forgotten by families back on the mainland. Some had families right here on the island who were too overwhelmed to visit. Grace listened to their stories the way she had once listened to Danielle's childhood fears, quietly, fully, without rushing to fix anything. There was Mrs. Eleanor, 82, whose son in Miami promised every Christmas to bring her home, but never did. Mr. Clive, 87, whose daughter took his pension checks to pay for her own children's school fees. Miss Lorraine, 79, who had worked 40 years as a hotel maid and now slept in a rented room with no air conditioning because the landlord kept raising the rent. One afternoon, as Grace helped serve lunch, rice and peas, fried snapper, slices of mango, she found herself thinking, I can do more than serve food. I have the means. She started small. She paid Miss Lorraine's outstanding rent for 6 months out of pocket. She bought Mrs. Eleanor a new pair of glasses when she learned the woman had been squinting at her Bible for years. She hired a part-time nurse to visit Mr. Clive twice a week. Each act felt like balm on the raw places Mother's Day had left inside her. Word spread quickly in the small expat and senior communities. People began approaching Grace with cautious hope. "Miss Grace, my friend, Mr. Thompson, no relation, he's about to lose his apartment. Miss Grace, my sister's blood pressure medicine is too expensive now." Grace never turned anyone away, but she also began to think bigger. In July, 6 weeks after arriving, she sat down with a local attorney named Carla Persenti, a sharp, kind woman in her 40s who'd grown up in Nassau and knew every regulation by heart. Over iced tea on Grace's balcony, they mapped out a plan. "I want to start a foundation," Grace said, "something that helps seniors who've been abandoned or exploited by their families. Not a big charity with overhead and galas, just something lean that gets money and services directly to people who need them." Carla nodded, taking notes. "We can register it here as a nonprofit. You'll want a board, even if it's small, tax advantages if you structure it right, and you'll need a name." Grace thought for a long moment, watching a sailboat glide across the water. "Second Chapter," she said finally. "The Second Chapter Foundation." They launched quietly in September. Grace used $100,000 of her own money as seed funding. The foundation's mission was simple and specific: to provide emergency housing grants, medical expense coverage, companionship programs, and perhaps most importantly, legal aid for elders facing financial abuse or abandonment by family members. Carla helped recruit a 3-person board: herself, a retired Canadian judge named Margaret who wintered in Nassau, and a Bahamian social worker named Delroy who had spent decades in child protective services and understood family dynamics all too well. The first grant went to Miss Lorraine, who moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment with sea views and a tiny patio where she could grow her beloved callaloo. The second went to Mr. Clive, covering a year of in-home nursing and physical therapy after a fall. Within months, Second Chapter was helping a dozen seniors, paying utility bills, replacing worn-out mattresses, funding hearing aids, even covering the cost of plane tickets for one woman to visit her sister in Jamaica one last time. Grace insisted on staying involved personally. Every Thursday, she drove her newly purchased used SUV, a practical white RAV4, to the senior center to meet with applicants. She listened to their stories the same way she had listened in the early days, but now she could do something about them. By the following spring, the foundation had grown enough to hire a part-time administrator and a social worker. Local businesses began donating: grocery vouchers, pharmacy discounts, free taxi rides for medical appointments. A journalist from the Nassau Guardian wrote a feature story titled "The Quiet Revolution of Second Chapter," profiling 3 beneficiaries and mentioning the mysterious American founder who preferred to stay out of photographs. The article ran on a Tuesday. Wednesday morning, Grace's phone, new number carefully guarded, lit up with a Miami area code she hadn't seen in almost a year. She let it go to voicemail. The message was from Danielle. "Mom, it's me. I saw the article online. I didn't know about any of it. The money, the condo, the foundation. All this time we thought, God, Mom, we were so wrong. Please call me back. The kids miss you. I miss you. We need to talk." Grace sat on her balcony listening to the message twice. She felt the old ache rise, the one that remembered nursing Danielle through ear infections, saving for nursing school, paying for the wedding dress. But the ache was smaller now, muffled by distance and time and the steady rhythm of a life rebuilt. She did not call back. Not yet. Instead, she forwarded the article to Carla with a short note. "We may need to expand the legal aid program. I have a feeling we're going to get more applications soon." Summer brought the first big test. A 77-year-old woman named Beatrice arrived from Florida with nothing but a suitcase and a story painfully familiar to Grace. Beatrice's daughter and son-in-law had convinced her to sign over her house for safekeeping, then moved her into a cheap assisted living facility and stopped visiting. When Beatrice objected, they told her she was confused and threatened to have her declared incompetent. She fled with the help of a sympathetic nurse and ended up in Nassau because a friend had once vacationed there. Second Chapter paid for temporary housing, connected Beatrice with a lawyer, and, after 6 months of fierce legal battles, helped her recover enough assets to buy a small cottage near Grace's building. Beatrice became a regular at Thursday meetings, her sharp wit and gratitude a reminder of why the work mattered. One evening in November, Grace hosted a small Thanksgiving dinner on her balcony for the foundation's board and a few beneficiaries. The table was laden with turkey, macaroni pie, guava duff, foods that blended her American roots with Bahamian flavors. Fairy lights twinkled against the darkening sky. Someone put on soft jazz. Laughter rose and fell with the waves. Margaret, the retired judge, raised her glass. "To Grace," she said simply, "who turned her pain into everyone else's possibility." Glasses clinked. Grace felt heat behind her eyes,